All right, so let's start with the big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour. The Syrian security forces are reportedly planning to redeploy to the Druze-majority Suwayda city to quell the fighting by the Druze and the Benoyan tribes. The development comes just a little over a day after the Syrian troops had officially withdrawn from the area. According to estimates, about 600 people have been killed due to a surge in sectarian violence in southern Syria. The interim president Ahmed al-Shara has, however, accused the Druze fighters in Suwayda of violating the ceasefire that led to the withdrawal of the government forces from the southern province on Thursday. Now, the images on your screens show a convoy of Israeli military vehicles driving into the Syrian side of the Israeli-Syrian border near the Druze town of Majd al-Shams, following some powerful bombings in Damascus a day before by the State of Israel. Now, Syria's Ahmed al-Shara has warned against Israeli interference in Syria's internal affairs, saying that this only leads to chaos and destruction, complicating the regional situation. This after the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said that Israel has established a clear policy of demilitarization of the area in Syria south of Damascus. It has added that Israel will continue to protect the Druze community. Now, furthermore, he said that the ceasefire was reached through strength and not by begging or making requests.
We have set forth a clear policy, demilitarization of the region south of Damascus, from the Golan Heights and to the Druze mountain area. That's number one. Number two is protecting the Druze in the Druze mountain. This is a ceasefire that was reached through strength. Not by making requests, not by begging, but through strength. We are reaching peace through strength, quiet through strength, security through strength, on 7 fronts. That will also be our policy going forward.
On Thursday, the White House said that the United States is seeing a continued de-escalation of sectarian violence in southern Syria. Now, following a ceasefire deal, the Syrian forces are planning to redeploy forces in Suwayda. Now, questions are swirling around Israel's motives by interfering in southern Syria. The leadership of the Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara has also raised questions about why Netanyahu wants to interfere here. So, Syria remains at this moment a fractured nation. My colleague Diksha Bisla gets you more details.
Well, at the start of this year, this is what the map of Syria looked like. And a lot has changed since then, though a lot remains the same. The Kurdish-controlled regions, as well as the Turkish-backed groups in the north, have operated autonomously for years. Pockets of ISIS still hold territory, and now Israeli air raids across southern Syria, particularly in Suwayda, have left more than 500 people dead, according to war monitors. Now, Netanyahu's emphasis on protecting the Druze is a powerful narrative, but it stands in stark contrast to the broader scope of Israeli military actions, which includes strikes on the Syrian Defense Ministry in Damascus. Well, there is evidence to suggest that Israel's long-term strategy, going back to 2011, is to keep Syria divided. There has been consistent Israeli emphasis on weakening the Syrian state, dismantling its military, exploiting internal stability, and establishing zones of influence that point to a deliberate strategy to prevent the consolidation of a strong, unified Syrian government. Well, the concept of the pull of partition and the concrete discussion of a potential territorial corridor indicate that while Israel may not formally declare a goal of partition, its policies are designed to create conditions that lead to a de facto fragmentation or a perpetually weak, internally divided Syria. Now, Syria's complex demographic tapestry has been a central factor in its prolonged conflict. Take a look at some of the ethnic groups in Syria. Well, the largest are the Sunni Muslims spread throughout the country, making up 74% of the population. Sunni Muslims form the majority in most provinces. Then comes the Alawites from about 12% of the population. They live mostly in the coastal mountainous region in Latakia and Tartus. The Kurds make up 10% of the population. They live in Syrian Kurdistan and in Aleppo and Damascus cities. Then you have the Druze, just about 3% of the population. They live mostly in Suwayda province and the suburbs of Damascus. Now, Christians form just about 2% of the population. They live mostly in the urban centers in Damascus, Aleppo, Homs, Hama, Latakia and Hasaka province. And then there are hosts of others: Ismailis, Yazidis, Armenians, Jews, Bedouin tribes and others. Well, now let's take a look at the stance put forward by various parties to the present conflict. Now, Netanyahu has clearly outlined Israel's policy in Syria as having two main rules: demilitarization of the region to south of Damascus, from the Golan Heights and to the Druze mountain area, and protecting the brother of our brothers, the Druze. Well, this is essentially the Israeli red line. Now, President Donald Trump has said that he supports the country's path to stability and peace. He signed an executive order terminating the Syria sanctions program. And third, Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara. Now, Shara has publicly expressed a willingness to engage with Israel, citing common enemies and the necessity to reduce regional tensions. Well, his government is walking a tightrope, balancing traditional alliances with Iran with the imperative to avoid broader Israeli strikes. Well, he has hit out at Israel for attempting to create divisions. So, as Syria's map slowly reshapes through war and diplomacy, the question remains: is Netanyahu redrawing the borders of a broken country? Or will al-Shara somehow manage to reunite a divided Syria?
All right, so that, of course, is the question. Is Netanyahu trying to redraw the borders of Syria? And to give us more perspective in terms of what is unfolding at this moment in Syria and also about the Israeli interference in the southern part of Syria, we're joined on the broadcast by Mr. Chris Doyle, who is a director of Council for Arab-British Understanding and also its current lead spokesperson. Mr. Doyle, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. Now, looking at the fast-paced developments that are unfolding in southern Syria, where reports now indicate that the Syrian army is being redeployed in Suwayda. This after Ahmad al-Shara in the past having said that he's not looking for a conflict with the state of Israel. How do you view what is unfolding at this moment in southern Syria?
It's extremely dangerous, and you've got a confluence of interests, you've got tensions. If we pan back a little bit, in the south, there have always been the tensions with the dominant Druze population of Suwayda and Bedouin communities that are nearby. And what has happened is those Bedouin communities have seen their allegiances more to the central government, whereas the Druze communities in Suwayda are maintaining fiercely their independence, not fully independent in terms of state, but autonomous control. And even under the Assad regime, largely Assad realized that he would not be able to extend full control over Suwayda. The Druze are very proud, and they certainly don't want that external control. But into this mix comes Israel. And ever since the departure of Assad back in December, Israel has been bombing the Syrian military. It's taken over more land. It already occupies the Golan Heights, but it's extended that area. And it has sought to undermine the stability of that transition. And it is using the issue of the Druze at the moment to further that aim, that it is actually sponsoring. It's declaring that if there's any attacks on the Druze, that it'll intervene. It wants to see the demilitarization of southern Syria. But where does this end? And what is the real agenda? That is the question. There are some who will argue that this is a distraction. It wants to get the focus on somewhere other than Gaza, where the genocide in Gaza continues. There are some who will say it's also a distraction from Netanyahu's own internal woes, that he's lost coalition partners, his coalition looks almost on the brink of falling, and that he's been trying to postpone his trial. But there is also an agenda. There is also an agenda to destabilize Syria, potentially to fragment it into constituent parts. And then for certain amongst the Israeli leadership, they see that this is an advantage to have a less powerful state on the northern border,
right,
some of whom might be some components of which might be more amenable to be friendly with Israel.
Indeed. And, the fact that Netanyahu, to talk about what is unfolding at this moment in southern Syria, he says that he wants to save the Druze community. Do you think he's being truthful when he says that he wants the safety of the Druze community, or what is his ulterior motive? Is this the Balkanization of Syria that he's trying to bring about?
I'm afraid I don't find his claims credible. I think this is merely a ruse, the weaponization of the issue of the future of the Druze community. He never stood up for the Druze community under the brutal rule of Bashar al-Assad. And indeed, when Bashar al-Assad was in power, Israel did not ever bomb regime targets. It bombed targets linked with Iran, linked with Hezbollah, but not with the regime. So I think he's instrumentalizing it. And there is absolutely no way that Israel can claim that it's looking after other communities, minority communities. We see that the completely appalling human rights record they have in dealing with the Palestinians. No, this is all about their own geopolitical and even personal interests, not those of the Druze. But let me also be very clear that there are really very serious issues with the Syrian government and the Syrian authorities, the manner in which they go about ruling Syria, the absolute need to be inclusive, that they are also responsible in all of this, as are some of the Druze leadership. What should be happening is that more responsible international actors should be very, very hard at work mediating here. Maybe we need peacekeeping forces in this area, but it's not Israel that is using this in a very militaristic fashion, using force to try to resolve the situation, who is best placed to try to bring peace and stability to southern Syria. It has to be other parties, and the Israelis should keep out.
I think you've touched upon many important issues there. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chris Doyle, for joining us with that perspective.